So just a heads up in case you haven't seen any of my other episodes yet today, my recording situation is just a bit different. So if you're hearing me and I'm sounding a bit different, that is why, and also why I might not be as boisterous and loud as I usually am in these recordings. So it's gonna be a little toned down Mitch, as some people are calling the smooth jazz version of Mitch, apparently. Regardless, if you haven't seen my most recent episode on, I'm gonna butcher this name, Zarek, the Silent King, make sure you check out that one at some point. But don't leave just yet, because my goodness is this card good. So to find out what it is, let's jump into it. First up, a big thank you to MTG Goldfish for the translated version of this card. Silverback Elder is a 5/7 ape shaman that costs 2 green. So 3 green pips. This is gonna be good. Whenever you cast a creature spell, choose one. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them on the battlefield tapped, but the rest of them on your library in a random order, or you gain 4 life. Now, jokes aside, okay, I mean, that gain 4 life is, not really something to write home about, but my goodness, those other 2 parts are incredible. So again, this happens whenever you cast a creature spell, and chances are, if you're in a green deck, and especially if you're in a deck that's utilizing this, you're gonna have plenty of creature spells to cast, so you're gonna get this trigger a lot throughout the game, allowing you to destroy a ton of artifacts or enchantments. I mean, depending on the situation that you're in, if there's an artifact or enchantment that needs to be gotten rid of, you can do it very effectively, very efficiently, every single time you cast a creature spell. And if there isn't a good target for you to take out for an artifact or enchantment, sure, second option's not bad at all. Getting 1 land out of your top 5 cards. Mathematicians in the comments below, please let me know how likely that is. I'm just gonna go ahead and guess. Let's just say, in a commander deck where you have, 36, 37 cards as the mana base. I'm just gonna go ahead and say 85%. I might be wrong, I might be too high, too low, I have no idea, but it's a high percentage chance that you hit at least 1 land that you get into play tapped. And sure, okay, if you're incredibly low on life, you can gain some life. Why not? But I think that's going to be the least chosen option the vast majority of the time, for the vast majority of circumstances, the vast majority of players, because players would much rather, take out pesky artifacts or enchantments, or just ramp. I mean, you're in green, of course you want to ramp, right? Now, as Eddie actually reminded me of, and I have kind of been harping on Wizards lately for a couple of cards, a while back. They seem to actually have finally started to do more and more, at least in certain circumstances, pips in cards. So, this Silverback Elder is very powerful. This is a very, very good card, and it could see a lot of play. But also, it's one that you can't just slap into any deck that has green, because again, it has a pretty restrictive casting cost of, again, 2 green, 3 green pips. That is quite a bit. So because of that restrictive casting cost, it's not just your deck has green, cool. Yeah, Silverback Elder. I mean, obviously, again, you are in green, you've got definitely a lot of great ways, the best ways, to ramp and fix your mana, but still 3 green pips is a decent amount to consider. Now, obviously, this is not problematic in, monocolor or 2-color. Potentially in 3-color, though, that's kind of where this is kind of the crux of it, though, where you really need kind of a good reason to try to include, this kind of a card in that deck. Because, if you want this out on curve, 5/7's great with all these, effects. You're going to have a lot of mana fixing needs to actually do that, though. Again, just my opinion, but I'm glad to see, Wizards starting to put more and more of these restrictive casting costs on cards. They can't just, just be, if they're a good card, just thrown in every single deck, like, a Smothering Tithe, etc., etc., etc. But overall, very powerful card, interesting design, that's for sure, and I can see this being very impactful in the right decks. Now, before we talk about commanders that might want to utilize this, I just want to talk about a couple of cards that I think might have, this might have drawn some inspiration from, or at least ones that came to my mind the second that I saw it. I mean, Aura Shards, of course, Quasali Singers are somewhat similar. Obviously not the same, but somewhat similar. Aura Shard says, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. Notably, again, this is an enchantment, so it's harder to deal with than a creature like this new Silverback. But yeah, also, I mean, this includes ETBs, so it's not just whenever you cast creatures. Again, if you've got creature token coming into play, or just blinking creatures, that can be impactful as well. So this applies in more circumstances with those, but still, I mean, on a 5/7 body with some flexibility, a really good card. And speaking of an effect like this being on a creature, well, Questali Slinger is definitely came to mind as well. A very good card for a cat tribal deck. Not too much outside of that. I mean, I got Shapeshifter Tribal too, but yeah, whenever it or other cat enters the battlefield under your control, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. So kind of like an Aura Shards version, again, but on a creature and specific to cats, whereas our new Silverback is, specific to you casting creatures, so it can fit into a wider range of decks, although again, its casting cost is a lot more restrictive, but again, does have a lot more flexibility, being able to, help you ramp, or yes, gain life if you need to. And it being on a 5/7 body is pretty impressive as well for just 5 mana. Now for the other end of things, okay, at least, I'm not including the gain life part, sure, I won't highlight that. But for the part where it comes to actually ramping on a cast, some cards that came to mind that, this might have been, somewhat similar to in the past, but actually I think this is a pretty unique effect. I don't know if we have any kind of effects that are really, really, really similar to this one. Please let me know if I'm missing something, but yeah, definitely reminiscent of Elvish Rejuvenator. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library, put a land from among them on the battlefield tapped. I mean, I think this is just copy-paste, essentially, for the exact same, effect, except, on an ETB of this creature instead on a cast trigger option. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's some precedent to that. Another kind of card, though, that did come to mind in green, though, is Season of Growth. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under control, scry 1. Obviously different, does involve, top of the library in creatures, though, and, again, with this Silverback, it's not really setting the top of your library, obviously. It's just straight up ramping you if you happen to find a land out of those top 5, which is great. Speaking of finding a land, I mean, in Simic, we have seen Quandrix Apprentice. Whenever you cast a copy and insert spell, like the top 3 cards of your library, you can reveal a land, put it in your hand, rest them on your library in any order. Yeah, I mean, obviously a different trigger, instant and sorcery versus creature, and that land going into your hand just out of the top 3 versus the top 5 and going directly into play. Now into play tap, but still that is ramping you. Again, a very effective, very powerful card, and I'm excited to see what kinds of decks are going to want this, and here's just a couple that came to my mind. One of the first ones was Goreclaw, because my goodness is this card going to be good in this deck. Goreclaw loves creatures that have power 4 or greater. Creature spells you cast with power 4 or greater cost 2 less to cast. Of course, our Silverback has power 5. So yeah, now instead of costing 5 mana, it's just going to cost 3. And of course, in a monocolor deck like this one, paying green is no big deal at all. On top of that, whenever it attacks, each creature controlled power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and gains tramples on a turn. Yeah, so now we've got a very angry 6/7 ape coming and attacking players as well. On top of all the other benefits, again, you're going to be getting when you're casting all your creatures with this. Yeah, Goreclaw is definitely a fantastic fit for this new card. Moving on, how about Nikya of the Old Ways, a 5/5 that says you can't cast non-creature spells, but, I mean, if you've got all creature spells in your deck, who needs non-creature spells? It says whenever you tap a land for a mana, add 1 mana of any type that land produced. So, yeah, obviously ramping, and, it's only 2-color deck. Fixing your mana is not going to be tough with this. Ramping is not going to be tough with this, because the commander just doubles up your mana from your lands. And of course, you can easily get, your Silverback out, and you can easily cast creature after creature after creature and get all those benefits. And of course, this is perfect in a Nikya deck because, well, this is a commander that, again, doesn't like to have to depend on non-creature spells, especially, for things like removal potentially even. So instead of having to depend on non-creature spells, you are just depending on creatures to actually do your dirty work for you, to help you ramp, to help you take things out like, artifacts and enchantments. So yeah, I can definitely see it seeing a place in this creature-heavy deck. Next up, now this one is going to be interesting because this is a commander that definitely cares about casting creature spells with Tauren's Fist of the Angels. Now this one I'm a little bit on the kind of edge on whether, I think that this one actually would consider it or not. A lot of Tauren's decks tend to be pretty low to the ground, so I should probably read the card first. Sorry, training. Whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 green and white human soldier creature token with training. So again, a commander that is very focused on casting creature spells, so obviously you can get a lot of triggers off of your new Silverback. Again, the problem is, again, 5 mana, again, for a low to the ground deck like this one that wants to have a very low curve and just cast creature after creature after creature. I mean, again, for a lot of decks built around this, I'm not saying all, it might just be a bit too pricey. I mean, it obviously could be a higher end card and one that can make a massive impact for this kind of a deck. And it can obviously make up for, it when it gets into play and you start casting creatures and maybe ramping or taking things out. But still, I mean, I think some Torrens decks will want it. That might have a higher curve, and other decks might not consider it just because it has a higher mana cost. Up next, though, let's talk about Volo Guide to Monsters. And yeah, okay, if you don't have any other apes or any other shamans in the deck, or you're okay with, having a couple of multiples of certain creature types, I mean, yeah, Volo is a great place for this creature. Volo's a 3/2 that says whenever you cast a creature spell that doesn't share a creature type with a creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, copy that spell. So yeah, if you're not running a bunch of apes or shamans in your Volo deck, yeah, let's get 2 copies of it into play. And then whenever we cast any creature spell, we're getting that trigger twice to either take out, 2 artifacts or enchantments, or, ramp twice, or, 1 of each, or sure, I mean, if you're low on life again, gain some life as well. So Volo, I can definitely see enjoying this one, again, as long as you don't have too many apes or shamans in your deck already. Next up, a commander that definitely has no problem with the, pips for the Silverback is Karametra, God of Harvest, a 6/7 indestructible god that says, as long as your devotion to green and white is less than 7, Karametra isn't a creature. So the Silverback gets you nearly there with Karametra, getting you to 5 out of 7. So yeah, that can definitely help get this commander online. Also, of course, on top of that, whenever you cast a creature spell, you may search the library for a forest or plains card, find the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. So the amount of ramp for this commander is even more absurd when you've got the Silverback in play, or also, ways to take out artifacts and enchantments. So yeah, I can see that card making a massive impact in a deck like this. And of course, one other thing I will mention, I think there's a card named White Mainline. Please correct me below in the comments if I'm wrong on that. But yeah, this commander also likes to utilize creatures that can bounce themselves or, bounce other things. So yeah, being able to just repeatedly cast a creature again and again and again obviously can ramp you a ton with this commander. And also with the Silverback in play can help you out a ton as well with getting that trigger a lot. Moving on, again, like I mentioned earlier, I think 3 colors is really where, you have to be cognizant of that 3 pips. I mean, you really need to think through it and think if it's worth it. Animar Soul of Elements might want this one, though, because Animar can really use this kind of an effect. It has protection from white and protection from black. Whenever you cast a creature spell, put a +1 counter on it, and creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each counter on it. So yes, means your Silverback's only going to cost 3 mana. Again, very specific 3 pips though, but still, if you get it into play, again, Animar can cast an absurd amount of creatures very, very quickly with that cost reduction. And of course, then getting that trigger over and over again can make it so you can just wipe out all of your opponent's artifacts and enchantments, and also ramp a ton. And sure, again, gain life if you really want to do that. But again, you really need to be able to fix your mana very, 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 very well in order to be able to do that. So again, this is kind of where, 3 color commanders is where you really need to think through it because of that casting cost. And sorry, when I'm saying, you really think through it, it's because, if you want to try to hit it on curve, you don't want to be waiting around essentially to find, more and more forests or more lands that can tap for green. That's really what I'm talking about here, because obviously, given enough time, any deck that has green is going to be able to get, 3 forests out essentially. And finally, for that same reason, yeah, I mean, Chilean Teller of Tales also might want to consider this. Again, Chilean Kali Torrens does like to have a lot of low-to-the-ground creatures, though, too. But let's just go through Chilean real quick. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card, then put a land card from your hand on the battlefield. So you already can just ramp a ton, an absurd amount with Chilean. A very, very, very absurd amount with cards like, Shrieking Drake, and again, I believe the name is White Mainline for the other one. But yeah, being able to just repeatedly cast creatures over and over again to just ramp further, draw further. Keep in mind, these lands do come into play untapped versus the Silverbacks come into play tapped, which I think is fair. But yeah, I think some Chilean decks out there are definitely going to want to consider it, and others just aren't even going to think about it because of, its mana cost or, the pips, etc. But now as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to give you my final thoughts on Silverback Elder. Yeah, overall, a pretty solid card, one that I not expect to see this spoiler season. I think can make a massive impact in certain decks out there. I mean, again, and Goraclaw fans out there rejoice, because I think this is a shoo-in for your deck. But again, I am glad to see, Wizards utilizing, again, more pips for cards, so you can't just, toss a great card, an extremely powerful card in any deck out there, that just happens to have that color, you need to actually think through it once you get into, those 3+ color decks. But yeah, also make sure you check out my other episodes, my other quick takes and spoilers. There's a lot of exciting things this spoiler season. And with that, the show has come to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So make sure you comment below and let me know what your thoughts on this episode are. And as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.